Today's distance model, we're going to take a look at more Omaha and Bennington area, how Omaha is growing into this area. We want to do one more model, a simple model I think that explains is the best of all the models, because I think it explains it best and it also applies well to Omaha. So we're going to do the Adams model, then we'll talk about the rise of the suburbs, and let's finally get into Bennington and how Omaha is growing out to Bennington, and the big question the Bennington people always ask, will Omaha ever annex us? So we'll do this, and then tomorrow I'll have you getting out in the district and drive around and looking and seeing this growth patterns that you see. All right. Adams' model, I think, is a really simple model. It basically says that the cities have changed because of transportation. And when we talked yesterday about Burgess's model and Hoyt's model and all those other models, transportation was the key. And instead of learning like four different models, Adams' model puts it all into one simple format. All right. So these are the four areas he talks about: the walking or horse car city. That's going to be like the Burgess model, the concentric bullseye. That's when the city was really compact, when you could walk across Omaha in a day. The streetcar city, which opens up the city, which really fits in really closely. Then you start seeing that in the section, the sections and stuff like that of the sector model. The recreational auto and the freeway of today, where all major cities have freeways around them, like in Omaha, 680, 480, and 80. All right, so let's take a look. So the first city, one, that would be like the bullseye. And you would have all of those bullseyes neighborhood, from the downtown to the rich neighborhood, all in one compact city. And in Omaha, that really was the case. I mean, Central High School was at the edge of the city until the city moved back just a little further than Central High School to where the cathedral is on 40th Street. But that was Omaha for the longest time. Omaha was definitely a very compact city, and you could walk across Omaha very easily in a day. But when you add streetcars, and in Omaha, the streetcars are really important from the 1890s, that where they start getting built in there, all the way to the 1920s and 30s, when they become very important. The 1900 to 1920 period is when streetcars really change American cities. And the growth is going to be long. If you look, see the green little lines out, those are the streetcar lines or commuter railroads, like in New York with the subways and stuff like that. And that changes the growth. Now look at the next one. The growth is going to be around those areas. So if you look at ring number one, look at ring number two. Once you add the streetcars, you get what I call the Patrick City. If you look how number two looks more like a starfish, okay? And that's because the city grows along those things. In Omaha, the streetcar lines along Dodge and Dundee streets, along the Radial Highway, along 24th Street, that's where the city grew. Okay, but after Henry Ford, and people start driving further out, arterial highways are main streets, like Maple Street, like Dodge Street, okay? Those are important streets, L Street, Center Street. And what happens is these allows people to get further in. So if you look at the dates of this, okay? So 1920, Henry Ford has made the car affordable, and cities start expanding with that, okay? The next big growth, according to Adams, is going to be um, after World War II, when you start going to interstates, expressways, and stuff like that. In Omaha, once we built the 680 expressway all around Omaha, that changes the city of Omaha. Those of you that have driven around Kansas City or St. Louis, you know how the interstates have changed that. And now the growth is out on the outsides, and that's led to Ed City. So if you look right below where it says Adams Model, and you see the two roads and then the two expressways and the cross beam between it, that would be like those edge cities out there, that on the edge of the big cities where the interstates connect everything and people start growing out there. And that, in a way, is Adams' model. I think it's a very simple way of showing how cities have grown. All right, let's get into us, Bennington, the suburbs. Suburbs are kind of a more recent phenomenon. Once you have transportation that people can get out to the suburbs, then they want to live out in the suburbs. People want to live away from the city. But really, it doesn't happen. During the 1930s, during the Depression, there's very little building. It just doesn't happen. During World War II, you couldn't, everything was rationed. And you just couldn't get the materials to build houses. So you've got a period in the 30s and then mid 40s where nothing has been built. Then after World War II, America explodes. You've got the baby boom. People are having kids. They want to move out. All those soldiers coming back. The GI Bill allows them to get a house, the house loan. The government guarantees your house. And so this expands the suburbs. People start wanting to move out there. Now with the GI Bill, they've got the ability to start buying these houses. And a guy named Bill Levitt, after World War II, Levitt had been a Seabee during the war, and he built a lot of stuff for the military. He said, well, why don't we just take this same idea and build houses, basically assembly line. So Levittown was where they would build that whole housing development. Basically, all the houses were the same design, but they'd have guys come in, and one day they do the roof on this house, the next day they'd be doing the roof on the next house, and basically you just had crews coming in. And it's like today, a lot of housing developments around here really have like about 3 different models of houses, and the walls for your houses today, they come in on semis. They're pre-assembled, and they just, what, in the old days you had framers. Today, now we just have the houses. They bring the frame out, put them up, throw a roof on it, and bam. And this lets suburbs rise. Okay. Now, with the rise of suburb, you get what are called bedroom or satellite communities. A bedroom community, the concept was that people live there, they sleep there, but they work in the big city. And it's like Omaha is a big city where the jobs are, but why would you want to live in Omaha? Why would you want to live out here in Bennington? A bedroom community is one term, a satellite is another. It's like the moon is a satellite and orbits the earth. Well, Bennington and Gretna and cities like that orbit Omaha. People live in Gretna, in Bennington, but they work in Omaha. So that's what a satellite community. Little towns surrounding the big city, and they're separate from the big city. Bennington is its own city. It's got its own city government. If you look at the pictures here, the one on the left bottom is the downtown. That was the old Bennington. But like we talked about yesterday, if you look on the one on the right, that's Cubby's, and the area up there, that's the new area up top where the new development is, okay? But really, there's not a lot of jobs in Bennington. I mean, we have great stores and restaurants in Bennington, don't get me wrong. I love eating in Bennington, those things like that. But really, the majority of people live in Bennington seem to work in Omaha or connected to. And the suburbs that have sprung up around Omaha, the Hanover Falls, the Waterfords, and stuff like that, those people all work in Omaha, basically. So we are a satellite community or bedroom community, but these suburbs are creeping out and they surround us. Millard was once a bedroom or satellite community. Omaha surrounded it, annexed it. Elkhorn used to be its own town. Omaha surrounded it, annexed it. Bennington has not been. This is what's called urban sprawl. Urban sprawl is unrestricted growth. That's where cities just grow out and out and out. You get housing development after housing development way out in the country. This is Henderson, Nevada. A guy I used to teach with lives in Henderson, so I put this shot in for him. And basically, why would you want to live in the places like Las Vegas or stuff? You want to live way out there, But you get this sprawl, and in this picture, you look, these housing developments go way out in Nevada into the desert areas and stuff. In Omaha, all the farms around here. I remember when Maple Street was farms. And, I remember some of the farmers, like Nelson's Landing over there. That was Howard Nelson, went to my church. And all these farms, though, have been swallowed up. Over on 168th and 4th Street is Summerhill Farms. It's a development. Well, Summerhill Farms, what used to be a farm, that was Wayland McGee. But urban sprawl is where people keep coming out and they buy up this farmland and turn it into houses. And you get housing development after housing development after housing development. And cities basically sprawl. With that comes something called checkerboard development. And that's where, if you look at the middle picture, that's where you've got a housing development, fields, and another housing development, fields, and another housing development. You want to see that? Drive out military. Think about military where you got like some housing developments by the lake, and then there's fields. And then as you come up on Ida Street there, military, and by Ida, where it kind of merges over, all of a sudden you've got more housing developments. Then there's a field. Then there's another housing development. And checkerboard development, it's uneven. Basically, your sprawl is coming out, but you're not filling in all the gaps. People are just racing out with the developments. But those gaps get harder and harder to fill, and they're harder to farm. It's really uneven development. What happens when you've got that, you're not really controlling. Cities or people are supposed to be controlling it are not controlling it. In the Omaha area, we have these boards that are designed to decide what you can do and what you can't with your land. Well, they've kind of laxed a little bit and let the city just race on out. And these developments along Bennington are swallowing up this farmland. But you know what? The farmland loses its value as farmland. It's worth more to put houses on. when you could take an acre of farmland and grow so much corn, but you could take an acre of land and you could throw like 3 or 4 houses on it, a housing development, it's worth more. I mean, you get $10,000, $15,000 an acre per house just in that development. I mean, just for the land, you can't afford to farm that. But it leads to uneven development, and some cities have more problems with this than others. All right, now annexation. So you understand it. This map right over here this shows Omaha. The blue area is actually the city limits. Bennington is not in that. Okay. And so what happens is, if Omaha wants to expand their city limits and move out and take more land officially into the city, there's some rules they have to follow. They can't go across county lines. That's why Bennington can't, annex like Papillion or something like that. And you can't annex a town of over 10,000 people without their approval. And they don't want to be annexed, so they won't. The most beautiful example of this was Elkhorn. Elkhorn's population was under 10,000, and they were their own city. And they liked their city and their police and their fire, and they were really happy. Well, Elkhorn decided they wanted to annex some of these developments around Elkhorn, and that would put their population over 10,000 people, and then Omaha wouldn't be able to annex them. And if Omaha couldn't annex them, they couldn't go out any further than Elkhorn. That would be like a boundary. So Omaha decided they had to annex Elkhorn. But there was a kind of the glitch, like Elkhorn had to propose their annexations, wait a month and have meetings, and then whatever. Omaha jumped the gun and was able to race through. How did they develop annex Elkhorn? They got it because Elkhorn didn't have 10,000 people. It's in the same county. But anything that Omaha annexes actually has to be touching Omaha. It has to be touching the city limit, right? So what they did is they annexed out. And if you look where it says Pacific Woods, and that's Elkhorn over there, you see there's a real tenuous blue line out to Elkhorn, and that's what Omaha did. They annexed a bunch of little properties so they could connect it, just like a jigsaw puzzle, to Omaha, and they got it. But here's an important concept. There's a lot of areas around Bennington that are not annexed in Omaha, and truth be told, won't be annexed for a long time. The reason is, Omaha, if you annex an area, then you now have to provide fire protection. You have to provide police. You got to do the sewers, the water lines. You got to do the trash collection. It costs a lot for a city to bring areas in, but they don't get any money from it. Omaha does not. When they tax, we live in Nebraska. They tax the heck out of us. When they tax my house and all, that money goes to like the NRD, Natural Resource District. It goes to Metro Community College. It goes to Bennington School District because I live in the district. That money doesn't go to the city of Bennington. I don't live in Bennington itself. I live just outside the city limits. So it's the same thing with Omaha. Where Omaha gets their money is from sales tax. That's right. Every time you go to Walmart, Target, or wherever, you pay sales tax on everything you buy. So Omaha wants to annex business areas much more. That's why they were really excited about annexing Maple Street. Think of all the businesses along Maple Street. Take that Super Target and the Super Walmart, how much money they bring in. Whereas these little housing developments don't. They cost the area. So when they build a housing development like a Hanover Falls or Waterford, any of those ones around here, what they do is they form an SID, a Sanitary Improvement District. And basically that's the group that's responsible for when they do the development, all the sewers, the water, the sidewalks, the streets. And everybody that buys a house in that has to pay that off. Everybody in that housing development's got to pay off that Sanitary Improvement District. The city of Omaha, if it takes it over, absorbs the SID and would have to pay it off. So Omaha does not want to annex these housing developments until they've paid those SIDs off. Now, once they've paid them off, if you start looking, there's things then that they do. If you look at the map over here, this is the 2018 Omaha annexations. And there's certain things that they just didn't do. Cherry Ridge, that's over there by the High V on Fort Street, if you know where that is. Lake Cunningham Ridge, those are the housing developments over by Lake Cunningham. Well, those are on the edge of Omaha, and as those SIDs get paid off, it makes sense for the city to go ahead and annex them and bring them in because it doesn't add that much cost to them. The Miracle Hills Golf Course, that's another thing. But if you look in there, there's some areas in whites that Omaha hasn't got around to annexing. But these are little things that they want to annex for specific reasons. And so these are the ones, look, the red areas are what was proposed by the mayor of Omaha in 2018 to annex. And so what they do is they'll take little areas like that. So now let's get to Bennington. Will Omaha annex Bennington? Well, Bennington, we're on the edge of Omaha, okay? Bennington, if you look at the middle picture there, look at the rating that Bennington has for 2020 for places, okay? Bennington, if you look at the top there, is at A. It says A minus. We're A plus. Come on. But Bennington is a good area to develop. We have very good schools, lower crime rates, our property values stay well, and we're outside of Omaha. So people would like to build out to Bennington. The Bennington School District is growing. And if you look at the picture on the far right, or far left, it shows that because our school district is growing, there's so many housing developments out here, we have had to add Anchor Point as an elementary school. Voters just approved, let's build another middle school, or prepare to build another middle school, or prepare to build another elementary school off of Military there, because houses keep building in. So as Bennington grows, more and more houses build in. So like if you look at right below the picture in the middle, there's the outline for Anchor Point. And you can see in the very bottom right-hand corner, that's where the school, and the pink area is Anchor Point School, okay? And if you look over right next to it, it's kind of a picture as Anchor Point's developing and filling in. So Bennington is going to keep filling in with housing developments. If you drive on 168th Street, again, look at Anchor Point, look at Somerville Farms, look over at Stratford Park, look at the areas that are being developed around here. People are moving left and right. So let's ask ourselves the question, will Omaha annex Bennington? A lot of people in Bennington always ask that. Well, remember, they have to have a path to Bennington. The closest city limits, if you look over on the far right here, the map of Omaha, the closest that Omaha really comes to Bennington is Lake Standing Bear. Lake Standing Bear is in Omaha City. That's why when Mayor Stothert just recently here, because the coronavirus closed all the parks, if you drive by Standing Bear, there's barricades there so you can't get in Standing Bear. Standing Bear is in Omaha. All the other developments past that aren't. For Omaha to annex Bennington, they would have to annex the developments that would link them to Bennington. You would have to annex the development along Military, the one that's a triangle between Military, State Street, and 144th. They would have to annex the area right opposite the Big Red Barn. You know where the Big Red Barn is. Now, of course, there's no housing developments between that triangle of State Street, Military, and 156th, and Bennington itself. So it would have to annex down the valley where all the houses are acreages. So Omaha probably could get here if they really wanted to. But again, remember what I talked about. Why would it? Bennington is growing, but that's just growing with the suburbs. If Omaha annexed Bennington, Omaha would have to take up the expenses of Bennington, including snow removal and police and fire and stuff like that. What would they get back from annexing Bennington? Think about it, kids, right now. Let me give a quick pause. What are the businesses in in Bennington, that would bring Omaha sales tax money? Yeah, think about it. Our big businesses, we have our restaurants, the Warehouse, Nate's, okay? The fast food, Subway, and Runza. Think about Cubby's. A lot of people come in there for Cubby's gas. You got TNR. You've got a couple other businesses around in Bennington. You've got smaller businesses. Are any of those businesses going to bring in a lot of sales tax dollars for the city of Omaha? No. Think about one Walmart on Maple Street and how much money that brings in. And then think of all the businesses in Bennington. So there's not an over-pressing desire for Omaha to annex Bennington. And besides, the growth is going west. It's not really north of Bennington. Do you see any houses or stuff really growing north of the highway along Bennington? Not really. And not too far north of that is the county line where Omaha couldn't grow anyhow. So Omaha has no pressing need to annex Bennington like they did Elkhorn. So there's not a need for them to. There's not a financial incentive for them to do it. And to do it, they would have to take a lot of these SIDs that are not paid off, the sidewalks and fire and stuff like that. So in the long term, Omaha someday may annex Bennington. But right now, it doesn't look like it's imminent. Okay? Now, the next thing we're going to do then with this is we're going to take a look at the Bennington area itself and how it's growing. So on Classroom, we're going to have some things for you to do to take a look at the Bennington area. But hopefully this helps you understand a little bit about how suburbs rise and are developed, bedroom communities, and bedroom communities are still there. I mean, there's still people that live in Blair, that work in Omaha. But of course, Blair's got the big Cargill plant and other stuff. Blair has businesses, but there are people that live in Arlington and Kenner that work in Omaha. Waterloo, work in Omaha. And, down south, down like by Springfield and stuff that work in Omaha. There's still satellite communities around Omaha, but Omaha is only growing out so far and so fast. And it's really hard to see how much farther Omaha is going to keep growing. The sprawl of Omaha is going straight west. If you look at like Center Street, if you drive on 204th Street in Elkhorn and you go south to Gretna, there's a point there where you see Omaha racing out to touch that street. And that's along like around basically out there where Center Street is, or industrial, that area. From Elkhorn south, you can see Omaha is growing out to that far. North of Elkhorn, you see it's a lot of country yet by the John Deere dealership and stuff like that. It's still very rural. Maybe someday it'll get out to that age and you'll be able to tell your kids, I remember when Bennington stopped at blank street. Well, it's just going to keep growing. So hopefully that gives you a little idea about sprawl, development. And again, you hope cities are smart, that they develop. Infilling is where you go ahead and you fill those areas of checkerboard development in by limiting the growth outward until you've got everything filled in. That's smarter because it takes care of your city services better, okay? And you'll understand Omaha annexation, and they propose it, they vote on it, but if you look at the map, look at the little red areas. This is not all the growth or development. If you look where Bennington is, Weston Hills, go look up there, there's a lot of developments there. They're just not there. You don't see Stone Park up there. You don't see Stone Creek, whatever. I mean, you know what I mean, all the ones around Bennington. All right, so that's just a quick look at